Welcome to LSC. It's sports time. Today I have with me Creighton Incorminias, a former football player at Bethel High School and University of North Carolina. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, before we go anywhere, I got to tell you that when I get people in here, and I've had a lot of people come in, and it's been great, but your name and Kozlowski's name is right at the top of the list. And it's not just you, it's your brother and your dad and all, but we're going to talk about all that. But I'm so glad to have you come in here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I know you started off playing ball and everything, but you ended up, you were over at the HU campus.
Yes.
You grew up over, talk a little bit about that.
Well, my father was working over there and he coached. He actually coached for a couple of years under a coach named Van Cleve.
Right.
And then later they brought in Coach Lovett. And on Coach Lovett's staff, you had Coach Buggs, Coach Baycoat, Coach White. I mean, you have some guys who are pretty much legends.
Right.
And, you know, this is what we grew up with, in coaches' meetings, going to games. The trainer was Mr. Chappelle, real close friends with. So, you know, we grew up around football, coaching, and meetings.
But did you have, was it a little more restrictive there than if you were like at Aberdeen or at Bethel Manor?
No, not really. We have pretty much full run of the campus.
Okay.
If we weren't doing if we were doing something that we weren't supposed to be doing, we would always get told last because they would call our dad and say, okay, the boys are by the waterfront. I know you don't want them by the waterfront. Things like that. But we pretty much run of the campus.
Well, it was you, your brother McGill, and you have a sister.
Yes, Anna Maria.
Okay,
yes.
Now how old is she?
She's the youngest. She's the baby.
Youngest,
yes,
okay.
Yes.
And then your dad left there and you guys moved to the Bethel zone.
Right. Yeah.
But you, big as you are, you didn't play rec league until you were 12 years old.
12 years old. Well, my dad he didn't sign us up. We kept saying we wanted to play. Later on, we found out he was saying, I didn't think y'all were serious about playing. And he says, you know, I wanted to be able to take the time to be out there with you. So when they signed up Mickey actually played 1 year ahead of me, and they said I was too big. I couldn't play with the intermediates. Right. So they didn't know at the age of 11 I could have played juniors.
But nobody told you?
Nobody told me. So the next year they found out that I could play juniors. Just so happened, Mickey couldn't make the weight limit for the intermediates, and we both played juniors that year.
Oh, you played together then?
Yeah.
That was the first time you got to play on the same team?
On the same team.
And who was your coach?
Oh,
Do you remember who it was?
No, I know my dad was out there helping. I can't remember his name.
What was this in the
Northampton
League?
Northampton League. Yeah.
Who do you remember? Some of your teammates besides your brother?
On that team, we had I want to say, I think Alvin Jones was on the team. We had a couple of guys that were on the team that went with me for Bethel, but the problem that came into was a lot of the guys were playing junior high football. See, at that time, you still had junior high football.
Right.
So I didn't play my 7th grade year for Jeff Davis. It wasn't until my 8th grade year, but I was at Eaton, and they had just opened up Eaton as a fundamental school. Our mother put us there.
Your mama's going to make sure you get your education.
Yes, oh yes.
That's what mamas are for.
So she signed us up. We were at Eaton, but we could go back to the schools that we were assigned to or zoned for because Eaton didn't have football.
Okay, so you went back to Jeff Davis.
Went to Jeff Davis.
Who was your coach?
Colin Oliver. Coach
Oliver.
Yes.
Wow, that name brings back some memories.
Oh, yes, yes. And a lot of the guys, Zachary Dortch, Sean Williams, there were a lot of guys I played with that was at Jeff Davis that we went on and played at Bethel.
Now, your position was offensive center?
Center and defensive tackle.
Defensive tackle. Mm-hmm. What did you like the best?
Probably offense. My dad always told me I had the size and agility for defense, but my temperament was more offense.
Okay. You didn't have a killer instinct. You did, but
I thought things out too much. You know,
okay.
For him,
instead of reacting.
Right. I just didn't react. You know, he said, you know, you always got to think things out.
All right, so then you go over from, as a ninth grader, you played JV.
Played JV at Bethel. With,
and your coach was?
Coach Isley.
Steve Isley.
Yes, yeah.
And he became more known as a weight man.
Yes.
Did he do the weights back then with you guys?
Yes.
Because I remember you had that little old room in the back of where the wrestling was. That was your weight room, basically.
It was the weight room, right. And, you know, he taught us a lot of the techniques, and he was into the Olympic lifting. The thing that came, they didn't do it when we were there because at that time, Coach Isley he left Bethel for a little bit. I don't know.
Well, I know he went to Ferguson for a while. He went to Newport News Schools, but I know he was at Ferguson for a while.
But I remember my uncle, and they did lifting competitions, and he did the Olympic style lifting.
And who's your uncle?
Victor Morgan. You know him as Mongo.
And I know him as Mongo. And you know, I look at Victor, and I look at you, and I say, how can he be your uncle?
Yes. Well, it comes from a large family. My mother has 9 of them, and he happens to be the youngest. So he's more of a older brother to me.
Yeah, because you're not that much different in age.
No.
But yeah, that's kind of neat. But all right, so you played offensive, still played center, and
center and defensive
tackle with Isley. But then when you went to Cos
moved me to tackle. My sophomore year, I started off at left tackle, and after the first couple of games, he switched up some things. He said he didn't like the way it was, and he moved me to right tackle, and that's where I stayed for 3 years.
3 years, right tackle and defensive tackle.
Defensive tackle.
Okay, talk a little bit about the rivalry between Hampton and Bethel, because it was big. I mean, ever since Bethel opened up, and Bolin Shoup, who was on the staff over at Hampton, goes over and takes the head job over at Bethel. I mean, ever since then, it's been a rivalry.
Yeah. My freshman year on the team was, we had Walter Bailey, Tim Rohr, William Washington. You had a lot of guys on that team that went on to play college. But the Bethel-Hampton game came down to the last game. Yeah. And the old Darling Stadium was packed. We played Saturday afternoon. Yeah. And it was the last game of the season. And
it was always packed.
Always packed. Now, my sophomore year was the first time they played the game at night, on a Friday night. And that was kind of special for me because if we won that game, we had a chance of going to the playoffs. Back then, only one team went.
It's a different system than what they got last year, and what I can't tell you what it's going to be this year.
Yeah. It's going to be a little different, right? So, but we played it at night. That was the first time it ever been played at night, and I can recall the stadium being packed. And the old Darling Stadium, remember, they only had half of the stands had end zone stands,
right?
And the other half, where it was just grass, was filled with people, and we were kind of backed up, and it felt like they were right in the huddle with us.
I bet it did.
And that was pretty awesome.
Talk a little bit about some of the people you played against on the other against the other teams that you can remember to stand out.
On that team, they had Robert Banks, Tim Gould, Linwood Lumpkins, and Leslie Bailey were sophomores on that team.
They had a big team back then.
Right. They were Tim Orr. They were pretty loaded. I mean,
right. And so playing against guys like that, and you're just a sophomore yourself. Right. I mean, you talk about jumping into the fire.
Yeah. But that was kind of the neat thing, and the one unique thing that Kaz always did. He always prepared you. You know, you never felt like when you stepped out on the field, you're playing against, this and that. It was never that. You never had that feeling. You never had, and anything that popped up, he always had already practiced against it, told you about it. So it didn't feel that.
Let's talk a little bit about Kaz's personality.
Yeah.
Because Kaz is kind of unique. and I say that in a good way.
Yes.
Because Kaz really had his kids' best interests at heart.
Oh, yeah.
But talk a little bit, because I know you got some stories.
Yeah. Now, the great thing about Kaz was you could always go in and talk to him. Now, you may not always agree.
But that's a good thing too.
Right. You could always go in and talk to him. That's what this thing that was really unique for me, for him. And then later he always, nothing for it was, you could go out and practice and weightlifting this and that, and you turn around and you're playing basketball with him. So, you know, you had a real personal relationship with him. Okay. That made it extremely unique and made that, you know, you could do anything.
And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but you got into coaching. Did Kaz influence you? What a lot of things he did that work with you when you went into coaching?
Yeah. The unique thing was my father got me into it, and then had the great fortune of being able to coach with Kaz.
Right.
And a lot of the things that he had instilled, and the unique thing was my dad and Kaz were kind of similar, had different ways of going about things,
right,
but they were very similar. And so it just really honed in on a lot of different things. They were always about fundamentals, always about discipline,
right,
always about organization, doing things the right way, and always treating the players how you want to. Right.
Well, let's go back when you were playing. I didn't mean to jump ahead, but I didn't want to lose that train of thought because I thought you were on that thing. But you got to play with your brother. Now, how much younger is your brother? A year?
No, we're 11 months apart.
11 months apart, not a year.
11 months apart.
So you guys were like in competition all the time.
All the time, all the time. Best friends, but at competitions in any and everything.
Well, what positions did McGill play?
He played offensive guard and outside linebacker. So.
So you never played against each other as heads up, but.
No, but always with each other doing everything. I mean, everything. We actually had birthdays together. They would pick a date that was in between, and so we did everything. We shared a room together. We shared a car together. Everything we literally did together.
Wow. All right, let's talk a little bit about you graduate, and then you recruited.
Yes.
Different process today than it was then.
Yes.
Talk a little bit, because you ended up at University of North Carolina.
Right.
Great institution in itself. How did you get there? What was the process? Kaz help? What did he do?
It's a lot different for the simple fact of now you have all this technology, and they have different ways they can get in contact with you. Back then, either they came to the school, or they called you on the phone, or you went down to camps or games.
You got letters.
You got letters, oodles and letters, posters, and various things. What the coach said meant a whole lot more because they always had a personal relationship, either with the head coach or the guy who was recruiting in the area. Nowadays, things change so much. Right. Coaches move to different colleges.
Especially if they're very successful, they want to up the ante for themselves.
So that makes it different now. And back then,
Well, what sold you on University of North Carolina? Was it the coaching staff, the school, the programs? A
lot of different things. Socially, it fit me. The other big thing, it was about family. It almost reminds you of Bethel.
Okay.
In so many ways. Everything was dealing with family. I'll never forget, went down for a game and they did a pig picking and after the game, and just the different families that was there. Then later you had several brothers. At Bethel, it was gobs of brothers.
Right.
The Wallaces, the Fullwoods, the Brits, the Londons.
Right.
You just had groups of families, and during the off season or even you house hopped. Especially during the summer, it wasn't a whole lot to do. You house hopped, and everybody, you were always welcome. And the same thing goes what was going on in Carolina. Everything was about family.
They were just it felt comfortable.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right, you play down there.
Yes.
What position you play?
I played offensive tackle.
Offensive tackle. No more defense.
No more defense.
And your dad said, "You think too much. That's the place you belong." Well, your dad knew ahead of time.
Well, very surprisingly, North Carolina was the only place that was recruiting me for offense. Clemson was recruiting me for defense. Alabama was recruiting me for defense. Tennessee, you name it. Everybody, East Carolina, everybody wanted me for defense, except for North Carolina.
And you went because that's what you felt. Did you feel more comfortable there?
Carolina felt more home.
Did their offense kind of jive a little bit, or
didn't really look at that? And that was something that my parents kind of instilled in me. I never forget, we were having a conversation, and my father says, you're worried about football, but if you couldn't play, they wouldn't be recruiting you. So that's a process. That's something you don't have to worry about. And then my mother was really, really keen, and she has her way of going about things. I'll never forget, we were coming back from Clemson, and we're down there, and Danny Ford was the head coach.
Right.
Met Coach Howard, Frank Howard, who the stadium is named after, and great visit, this and that. And they're talking about the various things, talking about winning a national title. Well, as an 18-year-old kid, I'm sold. I'm ready to sign. I mean, show me the paper.
Bill, make me feel good.
Yes.
I want to be part of this.
I'm ready. Well, we've drove down because I had a wrestling match, so I went down later.
Right.
So we're coming back, and my father says, "What do you think?" I said, "I'm ready." He says, "Me too." And so my mother says, "Do you think that this is a fit for you?" I said, what do you mean? I start talking all this football stuff.
Right.
She says, well, what are you going to do when football season isn't in season? Name some of the things. Well, I really couldn't name anything. And she says, I just want you to think about it. I'm not going to say. She says, I understand the things you're looking at.
She's just giving you another way to look at it.
Right. And
fantastic.
So on the way back, driving back, I just thought about it, and we got home, and I never forget, Mickey asked me, he says, you're going to Clemson, aren't you? I said, I want to. I said, but Mom threw me a curveball.
But she made you think at it and look at it from a different perspective, and that was great. Yeah. Now, you've played ball on the peninsula, you've coached on the peninsula, and I'm going to get into this early because 757 area, athletes from this area. Is it the coaching? Is it, as Elton Brown says, it's in the water. I'm going to bottle the water. What is it? Because we're not just talking football. Right. We're talking basketball. We're talking baseball. We're talking track. Yeah. So we're talking athletics in this area. Unbelievable. How do you explain it?
A lot has to do with the competition. I'll never forget, we were coaching out at Gloucester, and our first 2 years we coached on a man named Jim Hedrick, and he came from G.W. Danville. And when he took the job, he was saying he didn't think that it was going to be that bad. I should be able within a year to reach 500. I said, okay. And so after that first season, he says, no one could have ever told me top to bottom how competitive the Peninsula District is. And he was saying even teams that don't have winning records have athletes. We says, yeah. He says, everybody can run. Yeah.
You knew this.
Yeah. And he was saying, it's just incredible. And, you go back to a lot of different things, but you look at the rec system that is set up and the competitiveness that goes on in that aspect. Then you get to high school and you just look at the coaches. Yeah. And, you look back at one point in time, you had Kirk Newsom at Kickerton, you had Kaz at Bethel, you had Bill D at Phoebus, you had Mike Smith at Hampton, you had Tommy Reeman at Ferguson, you had Coach Boone at Denver, you had Coach Lyons at Warwick. Now, how are you going to get a win? Tell me if from top to bottom. You're talking about guys who had success for a long period of time now. Maybe at the end of part of their years didn't go as well. But you're talking about guys who've had some real success. Yeah. And that makes it extremely tough. And so you look at the way programs are being run and the way they do. When guys go away to school, just kind of fall into place.
And I had somebody in the end, I can't remember who it was right now, Beverly, it might have been Beverly, who played for Kaz. Right. He says, when I went to college, it was easier than Kaz's practices.
Oh, yeah, yes.
He says, I was ready. I know I can make it at this level.
You're more than ready. I never forget the first practice we went through. at Carolina, I was kind of standing around and saying, is this it? We're only going 2 hours? Whew, okay, I'll take this.
After 4 years, and you evidently had a great career, no major injuries or anything, end up getting a degree. You got your degree in communications.
Yes.
And yet you don't have my job. Why is that? I think you'd be awesome at it, but you've got a great personality.
I kind of stumbled on communications. When I went to Carolina, at first I said that I wanted to do business, and the advisors there were like, let's take a couple of courses to see how things go. And after about a semester, about a year, they said, what about communications? What about, speech? Communications. I was like, I don't know. Well, started taking a couple of courses and doing some things and ended up liking it.
But you can communicate.
Yes.
And we'll talk about what you're doing now, but being able to communicate to kids and,
right.
and
well,
that sort
it
of thing.
Translates to coaching and,
right.
and everything. So.
Right. So you graduated, you go to the, first of all, you get the chance to try out for New England.
Yes.
Hall of Fame coach.
Yes.
Raymond Berry.
Yes.
Raymond Berry.
Yes.
He's the one that called all of Johnny Unitas's passes.
Yeah.
That in itself had to be awesome.
That was probably the most wonderful thing. One of the things I took away from him was about being a professional, about how to conduct yourself, about going about your job. I never forget, we had a preseason game and a young man played poorly. And Coach Berry was rather upset. And he says, I just don't understand it. And he says, here you put all this time in, here you do all these things, and this is the way you perform. And the guy had some plays in there that were, pretty bad. He tackled the guy. He was offensive tackle. He tackled the guy one time here. And he was just, a real stickler about you handling your business and
you do your job.
Right.
Everybody else does their job, we're going to be okay.
You do your job.
All right. Then you went to the World League.
Yes.
And we're talking the New Jersey, New York Knights.
Yes.
But they didn't have an injury reserve system.
No.
Just before the season starts,
break my hand.
Break your hand. And you can't be an offensive tackle and be one-armed. That's basically what it would have been.
Right.
So they released you. And that means no more football.
No more football.
Not playing. But somebody got you into coaching.
Yeah, my dad.
Your dad.
My dad.
He could see you had something to offer.
Well, one of the things he used to do with Mickey and I, when we would get out of practice early, which was rare at Bethel, we would go down. He was coaching Little League at that time. And we would go down and he would get us to work with the kids with various things, especially with their stances. And from real early age, he had taught us how to snap a football, how to get in the proper stance. He started, having us do that. So when I came back and he was like, look, come on, dude, you're not going to sit around. Come on with me to practice. I need help. Thinking to myself, yeah, right. You need help.
Well, you got to coach at a lot of different places.
Yes.
Fox Hill, Buckrow, Bethel High School, went to Gloucester, and Heritage and all.
Yes.
So, and you're still coaching.
Yes, I'm at York High School.
You're over at York High School now. Well, we're going to kind of wrap this up because I want you to tell me how football has helped and your communications degree has helped you in your relationship and the job you do now helping kids at risk.
It teaches you how to deal with different people, and it also really teaches you how to handle situations, good, bad, and working together. Being able to listen, not just also barking at you.
That's right.
You got to listen to what's going on, knowing how a person reacts and everything. We had at Carolina, I played for the offensive line coach was the late Bill Stewart. And he had a motto, and still hold to today. He says, prepare for the worst to prevent the disaster. And he says, so you're always trying to look ahead. You're always trying to do things to put yourself in the right situation. He says sometimes it doesn't work, but you're prepared for it.
There you go.
So those are the things that really take away from sports and the different people that you encounter. You just don't know when you're going to fall back.
Lifetime pit buddies,
Oh,
right?
yes. Oh, yes.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
I want to thank you for tuning in to LSC and Sports Time. I want to thank my special guest, Creighton Incorminias. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Till next time.